This is Maureen Kafkas, the Brain BS coach, here to tell you about the episode today. Today, we are going to talk about human design, one of my favorite topics and one of the most effective tools I've ever come across for helping me stay on track with my higher self and with the desires that I truly want and living consciously. So I'm going to do my very, very best to inspire you guys to also check out human design and see how it can work for you. So that means I'll be inviting lots of different people on to give their take on human design and how they've made it work for them. Today I'm speaking with Taylor V, who is a master certified coach, human design expert, and self-proclaimed offer architect. She co-founded Offer Design School, where she uses a mix of sciences like human design, coaching, and strategy to help everyday people fearlessly make money with out-of-the-box offers. So sit back and settle in for episode number 126 of the Brain BS podcast, Human Design with Taylor V. Do you want more out of your life but not exactly sure what that might be? Are you longing for something but can't quite put your finger on what it is? That is the universe speaking to you, and it is time to listen up. I'm your host, Maureen Kafkas, the Brain BS coach. I created the Brain BS podcast to help people define what success means to them and show them how to get it. I help you to let go of fear and doubt and prepare your nervous system for success. I show you how to understand your own energy and to trust yourself to make all the decisions. If you are ready to go inward and stop looking outside yourself for all the answers, this is the podcast for you. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Brain BS podcast. I have a special guest here today, my first interview in 2023. I'm sitting here with Taylor V. So Taylor, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and let the audience know what you want them to know about you.
Hi, Maureen. Thank you for having me. As you said, my name is Taylor V. Hello, everyone. I am a coach and consultant at Offer Design School. It's a school I founded because I realized I just had a love for helping people create the offers that make them feel like they come alive, but also feel really valuable for their audience. And for me, human design was a critical part of that journey. So I'm really excited to be able to make that connection here on the podcast today.
Yes. So we are going to be talking about human design on the podcast today. Before we do, though, I just wanted to clarify with the people that you work with in making offers, is it just related to coaching or do you do
So any entrepreneur.
Okay.
Anyone who wants to make money is going to have to deal with an offer at some point in that process, even if you're an employee, like you're accepting offers. So really, anyone who wants to make money is involved in the offer conversation and can benefit from my work.
Okay, good. I just wanted to open it up to everybody that might be
good.
interested. Okay, so I'm excited because I haven't really had anyone else on the podcast talk about human design before. So you have a important position here. You're going to introduce human design. Well, I mean, It's not that important. We'll figure it out as we go. And other people will coming on to give their take too. But we discovered when we chatted the last time that it would be beneficial for people to hear why people go to human design, how they use it for themselves and how it's beneficial, and get like all kinds of different perspectives. So why don't you first start with just giving us a little background on human design, and then you could go into how you came to it.
Great. So human design is a system. It is a synthesis of a couple of different ideologies and philosophies that are both Eastern and Western. So it's global influence. And it also has some quantum physics in there. And really what it attempts to do is create a chart or a picture of what it might feel like to be you, and give you language for that. And that's really kind of my premise to how I approach human design, which is that it's a language. It attempts to tell me what it feels like to be me, how others might experience when I show up in the room, and how they interact with my presence, not just what I say or what I do, but kind of the intangible things, the part that makes you kind of catch everyone's eye when you walk in the room. What if that's not a personality trait, but what if that's an experience that your way of being creates? And human design attempts to kind of capture that and give you words for that. So That's really what it is. It was essentially downloaded to a guy named Alan Krakauer. He goes by Ra Uruhu, but he claims to have a voice, have heard a voice back in 1987, and over 8 days kind of received this download. But again, he didn't create or receive the elements of it. He kind of created or received the synthesis of it, the ability to kind of formulate it into a system. And so over the last 40 years, he has shared what he received, and then he's had many students study it. And so depending on who you interact with around human design, you'll get different flavors of it. That's why it's kind of beautiful that over your podcast, you'll have different people kind of share their perspective on it, because everyone's going to have kind of their own interaction and even place that human design sits in the way that they think about people in life. And so, like I said, I bring to it that it's a language, but everybody's going to have their different interaction. So he's since passed away, and so it continues to iterate. But even he said when he was creating it that it kind of is kind of like an organic thing. It kind of continues to iterate. It continues to kind of expand over time. And so all of us are kind of adding and taking away from it over the years. It's kind of a fun way to learn
Right.
about yourself. So
Yeah, and I love that you point that out because that's sort of like what our personal journeys are about in thought work and spirituality in general. This is not
yes.
new information that's just
Mhm.
come out. It's been around for a very long time, but it
Yes.
evolves over the years, and different people find different ways of explaining it, which creates a different language. And some resonates, something resonates with one person that doesn't resonate with another. But I do think that one of my objectives of the podcast is to try to find a way that it will resonate with people, because I have found it so valuable myself that it
Yes.
inspires me to want to share it with other people. So why don't you tell the audience, like, what was it that brought you to it? What made you decide to focus on human design?
Yeah, so at the time I had certified as a professional life coach, and I had certified as a brand strategist, and I found myself helping so many people with the way that they thought about their business and the way they thought about marketing and sales and just creating offers. But I struggled to have the same impact in my own life and my own business. I felt like I couldn't apply or make it all happen for me, but I could make it happen for other people. And the more I connected in the coaching spaces and kind of noticed who else was struggling, human design was kind of floating through the community that I happened to be in. And I looked it up and I found out that I was right. Like over my whole life, I had felt kind of like the odd man out, if you will. Like there's something different about me. And sometimes that was in a very arrogant way, but sometimes it felt like factual. There's something different about me, the way that I see things. And come to find out, human design says, or would say, that I am a manifester type, less than 10% of the population. And that the way that I experience things is very different. And it makes sense that I would have an impact on other people and struggle to sometimes produce the same result in myself. And that's part of the way that, human design would explain the way that I function. And so it was so validating to have another way to explain it other than self-judgment and self-criticism. It was better than just saying, oh, it was just a thought that I had. It was like, no, there was some wisdom that maybe I didn't quite articulate in a kind way to myself, but there was some wisdom there. And I just I fell in love with human design once I realized that, oh, wow, it's affirming what I kind of know to be true, but in a less judgmental way than I was doing it. So,
Yeah. For me also, when I came to it, I was struggling, but
mhm,
I was struggling with the fact that I was getting clients and I was making money and doing the one-on-one coaching, but something felt very off to me about it
mm,
being sustainable. And
mhm,
how was I going to do this all the time? And something just felt very wrong about it, even though I was doing everything that everybody told me to do. And on paper, it looked like I was going down the right road. I just instinctively knew that I wasn't. And then I also, in the same community as you, heard people talking about human design. So I checked it out. And the first time I looked at it, realized I was a projector, which is like, I think 20% of the
yeah,
population.
mhm,
It made so much sense to me because I tried to
right,
help so many people for so long throughout my life. And one of the things about projectors, the strategy for us is to wait for an invitation for that. And I
mhm,
definitely wasn't waiting for it, but I got the same validation
mhm,
coming to it. And I saw myself in front of me. And it was like It's not, it was a relief, to be honest. It was like,
Yeah, that's
it's
good.
excitement and relief at the same time. It's like, oh my gosh, this like totally makes sense. Like why
Yeah,
this happened, why I struggle here, and why I do all these things. But then I proceeded to just walk away from it and set it aside for
same.
like 6 more months. And but then it got so, I got into so much pain and suffering
Mm,
around what I was trying to do as an entrepreneur and
mhm.
moving forward in my life. And I just decided to shut everything down. And I just went to human design, and I basically spent a year studying my human design,
Mhm.
not to teach anybody else about it, but to become
Same.
an expert on myself and how to have a life with way less suffering. So that's kind of how we both got to it.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about what being a manifester, what knowing that means to you.
Yeah, I think you actually gave a really good example something to contrast here, right? So you were saying that you were helping people and it wasn't as successful or it wasn't happening in the way that really was restorative to you because there wasn't a waiting for the invitation. But in my particular case, manifestor strategy is to initiate and inform. So I actually following the typical strategies technically did result in me seeing progress or being able to help other people because outwardly put, that is what a manifestor is supposed to do. When I show up and I just say what I think or just do what I want, oftentimes it is to the benefit of people. What learning my design though really taught me is how to have boundaries about that, how to value that. Because what I thought was just an idea that I was just willing to try apparently was innovative, but I didn't look at it as innovative. It was just my little idea. And so really studying being a manifester really showed me that sometimes it's not that you're always doing something new, it's that what you're doing has a timeliness to it that is valuable, and asking people to respect your boundaries around that, whether that's to pay you or to honor your time commitment. Those things help make sure that it is restorative to you, that it doesn't drain you. So those were the things that I had to learn over the year or two that I was studying. Was I actually was doing the right things, so to speak, but I wasn't honoring my authority, which was emotional authority, which just means I need to wait some things out before I take action, wait for clarity. Wasn't always doing that. And then also, just because I have an idea and I want to initiate it and inform, make sure I'm also informing about how to do it in a way that adds to my business. So everything can't be free, everything can't be an unlimited access experience, which is what I was doing. And it makes a lot of sense now how a lot of people would get help and I would leave tired and unpaid. So that's an experience for a lot of manifestors. And I think that's what us unlearning our type is often about, is how to have the boundaries in a way that serves us and the people we work with. So
Right. So that totally resonates with me. But I also want to point out too that even when the invitation, by the time I was in my business and starting to grow, I had learned then to wait for the
oh
invitation.
good.
But the importance of understanding what is a correct invitation and
Mm,
understanding that that invitation can be withdrawn at any point in your
yes.
relationship with someone. So it's going to be, finding the right time to
Hmm.
bring things up and say things to people and that sort of thing. But it also goes, and we can't go super into depth about
Right.
human design because that's
Right.
a problem I think that a
Right.
lot of people actually have, is they think they have to do this huge deep dive in it. I
Hmm.
find for my sake that it's better not to do that, so I don't do it that way. But it is
Hmm.
important for projectors, for any projector that's listening to this podcast, that it's not just the invitation, it's also the open sacral and if you have an open solar plexus. So I had no idea how to deal with all the energy that I was receiving from other people that I thought was mine. And I
Hmm.
literally had no emotional safety. So that's
Hmm.
what took me to human design. It helped me figure out how to become emotionally safe.
Yeah, you're not the only projector I've heard, and I'm sure some of your audience, whether they're in business or not, can, if they have an open emotional center, in particular, emotional solar plexus, they probably can relate to feeling emotionally unsafe or just unsettled around certain people and not always knowing how to kind of have the boundaries and awareness of what's theirs and what's not. So I think that's a common experience, I should say, that I
Yeah.
feel. Yeah, or
And we're
notice.
major people pleasers because we want to keep everybody happy so we don't have to feel their discomfort. So, which is
Met y'all.
valuable to know, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
for
so let's
sure.
talk a little bit about profiles. Oh, wait, before we do that, can you just tell people real quick how they can get a human design chart?
Sure. So if you go to, I like geneticmatrix.com, and I think it's / free chart or free body graph chart. You can, that's just a site I prefer, but if you google.com free human design chart, there will be a myriad of sites that pop up. You can put in your birth date. You'll need to give it the location and time because they need to make sure that they have the right time zone, and they will attempt to, or they will produce a chart based on that information that you have or that you provide.
Yeah.
So
And I
anyone can
actually
build a
have
chart.
an address or a place where you can get your birth time if you
Mhm.
don't have it available to you, that you can
Okay,
actually send in and pay for it. So I can put that in the show notes. But
that'd
I
be
just
great.
wanted to let people know in case they're like gun ho on doing this after they listen to the episode and they want to find out what
Yeah.
their energy type is. So
Yeah.
okay, so let's talk profiles.
Yeah. Before that, you want to tell them what the would you like to tell them the other would you like me to tell them the other types really
Sure.
quick?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So types in general are just kind of like how you are designed or how you function, if you will. So Maureen said she's a projector. I'm a manifestor type. And then there's two other main categories. One is a reflector, and the other is a generator type. And the generators have been broken down into two main ones. So there's the generator, or we call pure generator, and a manifesting generator, which manifesting generators have said that they kind of feel like a mix of a manifester and a generator. Technically, that may not be the scientific human design literal explanation of that, but that is how it might feel to someone. So those are the four main types. They describe how energy moves in the chart. So it's not so much that you can just feel like a projector today or you feel like a manifestor today. When we look at your chart, the accumulation of energy is how we can decide what type you are. So you will need your chart to be able to determine what your type is. And you might relate to a lot of things that Maureen and I have said and still be one of the other types. And that there could be a lot of reasons why you relate. But those are the overarching types.
Yeah, and I just want to point out too that sometimes like you look at your chart and it doesn't resonate with you at all, but that doesn't mean that it's not accurate. It could mean
Right.
that you've been so conditioned to be different than how
Right.
you are really designed to be. And that's another
100%.
reason why it's so beneficial to find this out, because if you're struggling in life and everything is a challenge and it feels like everything is so hard, that could be a sign that you're not living your design, because there's a lot of ease and flow when you start to get into it and you really understand how it works. So, okay.
100%.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I did want to mention the other types. So let's talk a little bit about the profile lines.
Yeah, so the profile lines are probably most comparable to what we might think of when we think of like a personality type like you've been given. So if you've ever done Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or DISC, you're kind of given like this combination of letters or a title. And in human design, the thing that would probably be most like that are your profile lines. You get two numbers, and when we put them together, we get your profile type. So mine is a 1-3. And I believe, Maureen, you said yours was a 2-4. Is that right?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So every line comes with a role. Think about it like a character in a play. You've been given your role. And so the lines that you speak about and the actions that you take really are ultimately in service to this role that you play. So the first line is an investigator type. And the second line, we would call them the hermit. They tend to like to retreat away and master something, and often find themselves being called out to talk about something, sometimes even before they're ready. And then the third line, we'd call them the martyr. Really, that just means they're willing to take risk. They're willing to press the boundaries on things. And it doesn't always mean that it's going to work out, which, martyr. The fourth line is an opportunist. It really means that they're about finding the opportunity, making the connection between ideas and people and people, communities and ideas. They're great at finding the opportunity through connection. And then the fifth line is the heretic. They are the person who, after the community has made all of the connections, there's a need to solve bigger problems, to handle kind of larger scale issues. And that fifth line really has the kind of vision or capacity to take on the bigger issue at hand. But normally that means they'll have to challenge the status quo. And so in human design, we'd give them the role of the heretic. And then lastly is the sixth line, and that's the role model. So, and that's pretty straightforward. You're the person who, once we've kind of worked through all of the goals and we've tried things and we've permitted away and we've come up with solutions, the sixth line really embodies this. This is what it looks like to really be. But to be fair, if you're a sixth line, you're like, I don't relate to being a role model. It's okay, because in human design, sixth lines go through 3 different phases. And it's really not until the 3rd phase of their life, over 50, that they really kind of step into their own and really see what being a role model means for them. And so when we come to a profile, it's a mix of 2 numbers. One of them is on one side of your chart, another is on the other side of your chart. And when we put them together, we get your profile lines. So as I said, I'm a 1-3 and Maureen is a 2-4. And when you see your chart, you'll be assigned a set of numbers as well. And it just talks about how you might experience the world on your personality side, the way you think about yourself, and also how you feel your way through the world. Do you move? Does your body experience a lot of opportunity and connection? Or does your body seem to bump into things and never can quite get it right and have urges to try things that your mind doesn't quite understand yet? And so we can go on and on and on, but that's the idea of the profile lines.
Well, let's also point out, because you brought up the 2 sides of the chart, that
Yes.
one is the conscious side, which is
Yes.
things that you're going to relate to and see about yourself. But then you
Yes.
have the unconscious side, which is
Yes.
the parts about yourself that you can't see. But that's how
Correct.
other people experience you.
100%. 100%. So the unconscious side is pretty literal. It isn't the way that you know yourself. But what I have noticed is that a lot of clients, when you stop asking them to identify with the side and just talk about the experience of the side, they can relate to the physical experience of it, but they wouldn't say, oh yeah, I'm a role model because I'm a 6th line on my unconscious side, but they can relate to feeling unsure of themselves. They can relate to questioning if they look right, if they're being right, if they're a good person, if they're the person they should be. And those are all 6th line experiences. So if you had 6th line on the unconscious side, it just means that you don't have a rationale for that role, not that you've never had any experiences in that role. So it's kind of
Right.
nuanced there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it's
Please.
been like for me as a 2-4, and
I
then
would
I'll
love
let
to.
you talk about your profiles. So for me, it's been really helpful learning human design because I have taken those personality tests and I've
Mm,
always been 50-50, an introvert and an extrovert, which
makes
totally
sense.
goes with the hermit and the opportunist, right?
Yeah.
The hermit, I absolutely need time to myself when I understand that now. And this is something that I have always needed my entire life.
Hmm.
And when I look at that now, I don't make it a problem anymore. I don't think that
Hmm.
it's a shortcoming or that there's anything wrong with me. I have a really good understanding of it. And when I am by myself, I just flow. Like I just do what I want. And I'm
Hmm.
like, immerse myself in human design, thought work, all this somatic work that I'm doing
Hmm.
now. And I love that time. Now, it's not always easy when you live with someone who has a 2 in their profile, because
Hmm.
my husband can take it personally
Hmm.
that I need time to myself. But when you come to this work and you really start living it, you understand that you have to set boundaries around your profile and what
Hmm.
you need. So I do that. So I have my alone time. And then I need to have my time where I connect with other people.
Hmm.
And there have been points in my life where I've tried to connect too much and
Hmm.
spend too much time doing that. And it feels kind of crappy. And then it starts to feel crappy when I spend too much time by myself too. So
Yeah.
it's understanding, typically those 2 lines, you have to find a balance with them. And then you
Yeah.
have to figure out how to make them work in your life. And I mean, honestly, one of the funnest ways that I've done that is pickleball,
Oh,
because that's where I meet a ton of people. I network and I make friends, and it's the opportunist. It's through their network of people that they meet that they
yes.
create their opportunities. So for
Mhm.
me, that kind of shows me like when I'm, and it's not, none of this is like steadfast. This is just how I deal with it. but you,
Mhm.
everybody gets their choice. But for me, I've never been into funnels and I hated advertising.
Mhm.
And now I don't feel the need to do that to people who have no idea who I am.
Mhm.
For me, I focus on my community and trying to meet people through that. And
Mhm.
even like if we need a contractor for the house or we need somebody to do the plumbing, I now ask people who they use and do it that way. And that
Mhm.
tends to work out. And when you realize these things about your profile and your strategy and everything, and you look back on your life on the things that were super difficult and how you did it, you can kind
Mhm.
of start to see why maybe it was a little challenging based on your human
Yeah.
design.
100%. 100%. So I think that's really interesting. So I have different lines in that I have a 1-3. And I think my experience was learning how introverted I am. So you talked earlier about you may not relate to everything in your chart because you might be conditioned a certain way. So I was always very extroverted and almost conditioned to present well, connect with people, be very outgoing, kind of always have an answer, be very witty. And I would say those are things that I can do, but I hadn't really given much airtime to the fact that I'm really deeply introspective and that I really like investigating and that I really like getting to the bottom of things. And I often am really aware of, where there's a gap in the foundation of someone's understanding of something. And that would lead me to ask more questions. And that's very one line. If it's on your conscious side, that's the side that you think about yourself. So I'm very aware of what others often aren't including, but I'm also aware of what I don't know and what I'm missing. And so I struggled sometimes to kind of exude the confidence that I was told I should have, or the belief that I was told that I should have in my products or in my services, not realizing that for me and my design, if I'm never questioning, I'm probably not being very authentic. Like I have a natural awareness of when something's not quite as clear or as complete as it could be. And that doesn't mean it has to run my life, but just being aware that that's not something I need to turn off. That's a part of how I'm made and how I process things. So that was big for me to be able to question ideas, to question approaches and strategies, like you kind of mentioned earlier. And then on the third line, they say we bump into things. So we're not really trying to bump into things. We're not trying to bump into people, but we press the boundaries. That's how you become the kind of person who can gain wisdom is you try things and they don't always work. The third line is associated with trial and error. And most people think that the third line is trying to find what does work, but really the bumping in and testing is so that you know what doesn't work. And that makes us incredibly valuable assets to have on a team is because we can usually, if we have any experience with it, very quickly tell you that's probably not going to work. Not saying that there's no exceptions to the rule, but I've tried that pattern and I've seen that play out. And this probably isn't going to turn out how you think it might. Feel free to try it. And that wasn't something that I owned as expertise, not in coaching or in my business, but also in my relationships. I have my own wisdom that I've gained around, my perception about how things work or what may not work. And nobody has to agree with me, but if I don't own it as the way that I see things or the way that I approach things, it really just limited my life. And so I think that that's been my experience with 1-3, being a 1-3 is really just owning the questioning that I'm willing to do and the ideas that I'm willing to challenge and coming to find out that people actually value and work with me not because of all of the success that I thought I needed to have, but because of the profound questions I'm willing to ask and the things I'm willing to be unsure about that everybody else is sure about. And so I think this is to me one of the benefits of finding out something like your profile lines is you really can figure out where you're overcompensating or conditioned to act in one way, and you're really made to do something else.
Yeah, I love that because that also makes me think of with a line 3, you experiment. So with
Yes.
experiment, you don't know what the outcome's going to be. So there literally isn't really any what we perceive to be failures when something doesn't
No.
work, because your job
No.
is literally to keep trying all these different things and be willing to, isn't it helpful to know that you're a 3 and when you look at that and you understand
Yes.
that it would actually bring so much value that you did do the experiment anyway, and you're going to be able to help
Yes.
other people with that?
100%. I mean, I think I said it kind of in a matter of fact way, like I can tell other people it won't work, but normally it's not telling them that their whole thing won't work. Normally it's like a subtle nuance. It's like this little element I would tweak, but go try everything else. And I'm only able to kind of speak to that subtle piece or that little nuance that maybe they weren't sure about because of how many experiments I've done, not because I got them all right. And I think that's a three-line confidence is like, I can't solve your whole experiment for you, but here's what I can contribute because of everything I've tried. And that, I think that's really powerful. So I love
Yeah.
that.
And I love that you bring up the confidence, because I feel like I have so much confidence now, knowing my human design, my type, and my strategy and my profile lines. I feel like I have like this navigation system for getting through
Mhm.
life that I doesn't mean it solves all my problems. I bring a lot of other stuff into it, but it's
Yeah.
really, so that kind of takes me into the strategies for making decisions.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about yours already, which is to wait for the correct invitation. And from my understanding with projectors, that includes recognition. So someone needs to recognize you and recognize the exchange that they want to have with you and the contribution that they're going to make to you, and then be extending an invitation, not just, oh, I think you could take over this for me and just kind of hand you the project and not really acknowledge what it will cost you and what you require from the invitation in order for that agreement to stay intact. And so that's projectors,
Well,
to wait
before
for
you
the.
move on, I just
Oh,
want to
please.
add one more thing. Also,
Yeah.
with the projector, nobody else can recognize you until you recognize yourself first.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's the biggest life lesson for a projector, that you
Yeah.
cannot get the validation from other people until you give it to yourself first. And that's
Mhm.
where we get like a little mixed up. So I just
Mhm.
wanted to make sure I pointed that out.
Projector to projector, the best. um, okay, so manifestors are here to initiate, and our technique for doing that is to inform first. So if you think about manifestors as, driving the bus down the road, it's really nice to yell at the window, hey, I'm coming along. Not because other people are always going to want to go with you, but it also allows people to get out of your way. Oftentimes you come with the energy and the enthusiasm and vision that you need to get things started. And when you don't inform, other people aren't always able to support you and or let you know that they're unable to support you. And that can lead to a lot of wounding for manifestors. So for our type, if you find out you're a manifestor, just beginning to let people know. I mean, informing is really simple. Like, think information to anyone who could be impacted. That's as simple as it is, before you do it, so that everyone has a chance to, what I like to call to other manifestors, is conscious consent, right? They get to consciously consent or unconsciously, or consciously say they don't consent. And then you get to make your decisions and move forward with that information, which is really helpful to you because we also like to be informed. And the whole point is that you can initiate new things. You likely have urges that you want to see out in the world, or desires that you want to see done in the world. And you have the ability to do them when you reduce the friction through informing. Um, Generator types are here to respond. So whether that's a manifesting generator or a pure generator, regular generator, we would say you wait to respond. You're responding to anything. It's not unlike projectors, which it has more to do with the other human. Generators could be responding to, a picture that they saw or an experience that they had, and they could respond to that and be generating the energy to take action from that response. And obviously we want to follow your authority. So you'll see also in your chart an authority that's listed, and we probably won't have time to go into great detail about all of the authorities, but how you make decisions will be your authority. And you'll decide, of all the things that you're responding to, what is the thing for you to take action on. But it's always triggered by a response to something outside of you. And that it's a really beautiful thing when generators own how expansive their opportunities to respond to things are. I think when I experience a lot of generators and they're frustrated, which is kind of one of the themes for a generator who's kind of out of alignment, is frustration, is when they've narrowed the window of things they can respond to. They think that it needs to be another person or a specific statement, more like more like a projector would have. And generators aren't built the same way. They don't have the same energetic requirements that a projector would have. And so the experience is different. And then lastly are reflectors. And the reflector strategy is to wait a lunar cycle or wait for in human design, the energy moves kind of like in a cycle of the moon, and you have a chance to experience all of the different highs and lows of a decision. Now, the caveat I like to give to reflectors are everything in your life does not need to wait 30 days or 28 days before you make a decision, but the larger the impact is to your life, the greater the commitment or demand that will be placed on you, the more time that you'll want to feel through the decision. And what you're essentially wanting to check in with over time is, okay, today I'm excited about that, but how do I feel tomorrow? And then a week from now, how do I feel now? Am I able to maintain my position about this? Do I feel at, a sense of, do I still want to do this regardless of how I have felt over time? And if you get to the end of that and you feel clear and able to do that, then that adds that will reveal to you kind of where your next steps are. If you don't wait enough time, you risk making a decision based on who's around you or based on the experience you had yesterday. And it makes it very hard for you to make reflectors, I would say, like clean decisions. When you see a reflector chart, they're less than 1% of the population. They don't have any major definition like the other types do. And so when I say a clean decision, I think when you see your chart, there's a lot of white space. There's a lot of openness. And that's where you want to be making your decisions from, honoring all that openness that you have. And that's achieved over time. So
Yeah, because those open centers is where you are receptive to other people's energy impacting you, which is why the reflector is only 1%. I mean, 1%
yes.
population. So they're very valuable to have around. I heard it put that if you're in a room and there's a projector or a reflector in the room, you can tell the energy of the room by talking to the reflector. So, but you did bring up another thing that I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
Is the not self theme.
Yeah.
So for projectors, it's bitterness.
Yeah.
And bitterness is something I'm very familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of tied into a little bit of self-righteousness and resentment and like all those rolled together.
Yeah.
But when I'm feeling that feeling, I know immediately that something is happening. It doesn't mean I have to fix it right away, but I know that I'm not in living my design. Something has happened, and so it's not necessarily a problem that I'm experiencing those emotions. That's how I would have looked at it previously, and I would have tried to fix it, make it go away. But now I get curious, and I kind of do a little bit of a I don't know, detective work. It's like detective work when you know your human design. It's like, oh, what's going on here? Like, why am I feeling this today? And what happened? And, kind of piecing it together. And then for generators, you mentioned it's frustration.
Yes.
And for manifestors, I have a couple of those in my life. So I'm familiar.
That anger.
Anger.
Yes. Yeah. And then for reflectors, it's disappointment. It's just a profound disappointment or kind of letdown about life. Yeah. I like talking about the not self in contrast with your signature, right? So it's a bitterness for projectors, but in contrast, a general sense of success when you are in alignment. Not that you have the world's or society's definition of success, but your definition of success, and you kind of feel and exude that. And it makes you even more attractive when you're connected with your definition of success versus your not self, which is, like you talked about, bitterness. So
yeah, what is it for the other ones, for the generator?
So generators and their not self get frustrated, but in their signature or their high state, if you will, or positive state, it would be satisfaction. So they just function with this general sense of pleasure, that they're satisfied by taking the action that they're taking and doing the work that they love to do. And then For reflectors, it's surprise. So they go from being disappointed to living in this perpetual state of surprise. Because think about it, like they're constantly evaluating energy. And so it's a delight to kind of say, oh, I didn't realize that was a part of it too, or this is how I would feel too, or this is what I would see too. That's kind of the surprise note. And then for manifestors, we move from anger to peace. This ability to kind of know that there is provision and there's nothing preventing us from doing what we feel called or compelled to do. And so we get angry when that doesn't seem like it's at play.
Yeah. And I love that part about informing, because it's huge both ways. If you live with the manifester
Yes.
and the manifester keeping you informed, I find that it solves a lot of problems when there's communication. And to be clear, just in case any manifestors are interpreting this differently than we intend, informing is not getting permission for anything. It's
No.
just literally informing that this is what's going to happen. And both projectors and manifestors do not like to be told what to do.
Correct. Because we're not designed to respond in the way that the others are literally made to respond. The projector is here to guide things. They're here to kind of get the quality of the experience and make sure that we maintain a standard and that we're headed or tracking in the right direction, based on an understood definition of success. And the manifestors are not here to take orders. They're here to do things that sometimes others don't even know are needed yet. So really, our strategies are about making sure that we have the resources or the space to do what we're made to do. We're not really here to get communal consent about how this goes. We're the gift to make sure it goes in the way that everyone needs, but not all the time everyone likes. And that's important to know, especially if you're a projector or a manifestor type. So not everybody's going to like the way that you do things, and that's okay. And to me, that's just a human skill, though, is to learn that not everyone's going to like what you do. So,
yeah, that's true, no matter what your type. And for the projector, we have to keep there's an analogy of the lighthouse. So we have to keep our lighthouse lit. And we actually do that a lot differently than a lot of people. We aren't supposed to work hard. We're supposed to rest and we're supposed to play. So that was a huge thing for me to realize. But oh my gosh, it's been life-changing. I'm enjoying my life so much more now. I mean, when I first started the entrepreneur thing, it was like 12, 14-hour days, like obsessed with the computer. And because when us projectors get focused on something, we can really dive in like to a crazy extent, but then we completely get burnt out and we just fall apart. And I've done it a couple of times. That's sort of like what happened to me when I just stopped and I went back and looked inward. But there's no way we're not covering inner authority today and talking about it, even if the podcast has to be a little bit longer. Because for me, knowing my type, my strategy, my profile lines, and my inner authority has really been all I've needed to completely turn my life around by understanding my human design. So for me, my inner authority is splenic. So that means, and it, again, when we're talking about this to the audience, everybody has different interpretations of all this stuff. They even use different language. They changed the name of the charts. Karen Curry Parker likes to make it more positive, so she created all new names for everything. So you just have to find what resonates with you. But the spleen is something that's inside you that in the moment, it literally tells you if you're safe or not, and it says no. So some people have a different idea of it, but this is from Christy Inge. I learned this and I really like the way that she taught it, but it's just like a no. And instinctively, it's the only authority, I believe, in the moment that tells you what to do, which totally makes sense because I make decisions so easily and so quickly. But that also is combined with intuition that I have that is separate from my spleen. Two of those combined. And so that's how I know how to make decisions. So yes, my inner authority is my spleen, but there is something in my design that also has my intuition there. And that is my take on it. And that's my perception of my human design that I brought to it. Right. Yeah. So go ahead. So go ahead and talk about what is yours.
Yeah, so mine is the emotional authority or solar plexus authority. What it means is that I have a center in my design that has a certain way that we process our decisions, and that's through riding the emotional wave, the highs and lows of the decision until we get to a place of clarity, not certainty. We don't always know what the outcome is going to be, but oftentimes I find we become clear that we're prepared to weather whatever the outcome is. And the only way you can be clear that that's how you feel about it is if you wait the time that you need to really get to that place. For some people, they have a very predictable wave that they ride and can very generally say, "Oh, give me about 3 days," or "Let me sleep on it," and they'll pretty consistently feel confident, or excuse me, feel clear in that time frame. And for others, it's a little bit more fluid. They don't necessarily always have a fixed time frame. It kind of depends on the decision that they're processing. But in general, whatever your type is, there will be a wave. It will have a type of wave, and you'll ride it over time, experiencing the highs and lows until you get to a place of clarity. And once you're clear, you'll be able to take action based on your clarity. So whether that's to do it, to not do it, to adjust it, to adjust your commitment, whatever the case may be. So unlike the splenic center that says kind of a no, to your point, it doesn't give you an explanation. I find with the emotional solar plexus, where we kind of are clear that something's not for us, or we're clear and we may still need to make adjustments so that we can continue to be clear or able to commit to it. Um, so that's an inner authority. Sacral center, you could have sacral authority. And you'll see this on your chart. Even if you can't look at the picture and tell what it is, most charts will at least give you a little like keyword phrasing or a graph on the side, and kind of give you a summary and give you your authority. And so sacral center is a type, that's what most people say, like follow your gut, like that really popular advice about what does your gut say? Like that's sacral authority in the most kind of easy to explain way. You check in that moment, and it's very primitive. Think about a baby. Show them the food and they're like or and they're ready, and it doesn't come with explanation. It often doesn't come with rationale, but you get kind of this gut resistance or kind of guttural affirmation, and that's the sacral authority. What is your gut saying about this? Then we have ego authority, and that's driven by the ego center. So what is your desire? What is your will here to do? And typically when you have the ego authority, it sounds powerful. When an ego authority talks, particularly the ego manifestors, I mean, it can be very compelling to listen to them, because you almost want to say, yeah, we should do that. And if you don't know your own authority, you'll just kind of go with it because it's their authority. They need to hear themselves kind of committing and willing themselves into things. But that's a good point to say here, is like, Maureen's authority is not an authority for me. Even if we're making a decision about the same thing, I take it back and wait time. But Maureen may know in a splenic second, what she's going to do, but that doesn't necessarily mean I know what I'm going to do. So that's an important boundary to have. And then the other internal authority is called self-projected. It means that you have the identity center connected to your or defined in your chart. That just means you have a sense of who you are, and you likely need to process it externally so that you can hear if this is in alignment or in agreement with who you are. You often need somebody to talk to a little bit, but you're not looking for their advice. You're not looking for their counseling. You really just need to be able to kind of volley it and get it outside of your head so that you can hear your own sense of self and make sure that it aligns with you, or be clear that it doesn't align with where you're going and who you are. And that's self-projected. Everything we mentioned to this point is considered inner authority, meaning it's governed by something inside the body graph. The last two are considered outer authority, meaning you don't have any of the other authorities defined, or you don't have access to them. So you needed something outside of you to help you process the energy that's happening to make a decision on the inside. So outer authority, one type is lunar cycle. We talked about with the reflector. They use time. And over time, they try different energies and process their decisions, and they come to a conclusion. The time doesn't tell them what to do. The time reveals what's correct for them to do. So they use a lunar cycle to do that. None of these outer authorities are here to tell you what to do. They serve as a resource to you so that you can get clear about what's correct for you on the inside of you. And then the other outer authority is called a sounding board. Outer authority. It's talking out loud to someone to process your thinking. That's typically if you only have like your head and your ajna defined. Mental projectors is a type that would have that, and they'll need to just process. They need to hear their own train of thought. Now, in human design, no one's rationale or logic is an authority, but what happens is when you process, when you externalize what you think, you get to hear what you think. And you don't just get to hear it in your ears, but you get to feel it in your body. And then we can go back to, does that idea, does that approach, does this opportunity feel like alignment for you? Does it feel correct for you? But you can't process it internally until you've expressed it externally, which is why we call it a sounding board. You need something to throw that idea at and let it bounce back and hit you. And that's one of the things that often I find can be so helpful, particularly to mental projectors, is knowing that they're not asking someone to understand what they think, and they're not asking someone to be able to agree with them. They're really just creating the atmosphere where something can bounce back to them so that they can make decisions with how they're made. So those are the authorities. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. I love that. So basically for the mental projectors, it's like, just sit there and listen.
Yes,
I
that's
don't
a
really
wonderful
need to
thing to
hear
tell
your
people.
opinions or anything. Just sit
Yes,
there and let me just get this all out.
yes,
So,
exactly.
okay, well, I think we did a really good job of covering the types. I mean, in general, they say it can take 7 years to really study human design and start deconditioning from it. So you
Yes.
could go down huge, giant rabbit holes with human design. But I personally, and for some of you, you'll want to, because that's just going to be what you want to do and you're inspired to do it. And if it is and it works for you, you should do that. But for me, that wasn't the direction I want to go in. I don't even want to teach human design to anyone. I just use the human design for myself so that I know how to operate in the world and have total trust and faith in myself that I'm going to figure everything out and that everything's going to come to me when I need it. And it eliminates a lot of fear and doubt and suffering that I was experiencing before I became aware of it.
Yeah.
So I love the way you explained everything. I want you to be able to tell everyone like how they can reach you if they want to work with you and what it's like a little bit to work with you.
Sure. So just to handle, if you love human design and you just want to hear, you enjoy the way that I talk about it, we've talked before about there's multiple ways to approach this topic, then you'll probably like this free course that I made called Human Design in Under an Hour. Instead of going into all the nitty gritty details, I kind of give you an overarching picture of the system as a whole and some of the principles that are always at play when you use the system. And I made it like it's a 40-minute class and it's completely free. It's at humandesignplay.com. If you register on there, you can take the class and I have some free resources in there as well. If you were to want to talk to me about your personal chart, there's links inside that course for you to do that. And I'll read your chart and we can kind of dig into your design. I'm a line one, so I love kind of immersing myself in people's charts and kind of exposing them to all the nuances. But even to do that with me, the best place to start is sign up for my free course. Make sure you love the way that I talk about it, because as Maureen said, there's so many different ways of articulating this system. And I want to make sure that you continue to enjoy the way I share it with you. So that's one thing that I do. But as I started the podcast, I told you I teach people how to create offers, because I find that you can know about yourself as much as you want, but after you know yourself, most of us want to be able to serve other people. We want to be able to kind of see our impact in the world. And so for some of us, that even means making money. And regardless of how you measure that, it always comes down to an offer, whether that's an offer to help somebody or an offer to volunteer. You have to know how to package what you want to do in a way that's desirable. And so I've created Offer Design School. You can go to offerdesignschool.com and you'll be able to learn more about creating offers. I have a program called Offer Obsession, where I specifically help people make money with their offers. But in general, if you desire to have impact, you'll love being in my world. So that's what I do. That's where you can find me.
Yeah, well, I love the way you explain it. I mean, you just have like a calm, kind of articulate
Mm.
presentation that's not, well, like a little bit different than me,
Mhm.
which I guess everybody likes people who are a little bit different than them.
Yeah,
But I really appreciate the way you explained everything and you coming on the podcast. And I would love for you to come back sometime when I decide what it is I want you to
that's
talk to
great.
you about with it in the future, because I really do want to inspire more people to
Mhm.
get into it and not turn it into this big problem or something. Like it's so many people get overwhelmed by it.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not, that's, you're missing the boat if you're getting overwhelmed by it. And it is
Yeah.
a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's something to really take in slowly. And
Mhm.
there's just so many different ways to do that. And I'll be introducing people to more ways of doing that on the podcast. And then everybody gets to figure out like what works for them.
Yeah.
And you just discard what doesn't work for you, what doesn't resonate. You don't have to hold on to. You could just keep what works.
Yeah, that was my approach to it. And that's why I introduce it to people as a language, because you don't have to believe in it. You don't have to change your whole life today because of it. And as be open even to the idea that your relationship with human design or your ideas about human design could change over time. It's become a part of my business now, but it didn't start that way. It started as something for me, just to help me feel like I was learning about me. And that was plenty in the beginning. So I hope that everyone has fun with it. And I love the idea of playing with it. So human design
Yeah, that's
play.
hilarious. Next year, I'll probably be doing human design readings.
I know.
That's
Don't
what I
put it
said. I have
past you.
no intention. Well, you never know, right?
You never know.
No.
I had zero intents of teaching it at all.
Well,
So
we're
here we
glad
are.
that you are.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
All right, audience. I know you learned something valuable here today. I'll see you next episode. Thanks for being here and learning about Brain BS. I hope you enjoyed listening to the episode as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. If you did, please take a little time to do a quick review, give me 5 stars, and share it with everyone you know. If you're actually interested in being on the podcast yourself or have questions about it, you can find me in the Brain BS podcast community on Facebook. See you next time.